Hello, and thank you for your interest in RITE Age Verification. This demo will show you how you can use this program to quickly and easily verify the age of a customer when purchasing regulated products such as alcohol, cigarettes, pharmaceuticals, or any other adult product. We will start by performing a basic transaction where a cashier is required to swipe an ID, for example, a bottle of wine. We will later show some of the program's advanced configuration abilities. First, we will add a bottle of wine to a transaction and then attempt to click the tender button to accept payment. As you can see, before the tender window pops up, the RITE Age Verification window appears, asking the cashier to swipe an ID. To be helpful, it automatically displays the date a customer needs to be born on to be 18 or 21, the two most commonly used ages required to purchase regulated products. Also note the override and manual entry buttons. These can be configured to allow a particular user to skip this process or manually enter a customer's date of birth. I'll click the override button. Notice that it's asking me for a username and password. If I entered a user who was allowed to override the age verification prompt, like a manager for example, it would allow me to skip scanning an ID. I'll cancel out of this and continue on. We'll talk more about this later. I will now swipe a customer's ID. The age verification program will decipher the license data to figure out how old the customer is and decide if the transaction can proceed. Notice that in this example, the customer was not old enough and the transaction has been halted. We'll swipe another customer's ID instead. Now that the customer has been deemed old enough to purchase the products, it allows me to continue to the tender screen and finish the transaction. Now that the sale is complete, we will click the journal button to see a picture of the receipt that would have printed. You can see that the driver's license verification data is attached and tracked with each transaction. You can even use RMS reports to track this data through the manager program. This is a very basic example of how our software works. Next, we will show you how the program reacts to a few other situations. In this second transaction, I'm going to log out of the cashier user and log into a manager user that we have set up with more privileges. I will now ring the same bottle of wine and proceed to tender. When the age verification window appears, I will click Override. Notice that it allows me to proceed to tender without even asking me for a user ID and password. This is because the program is aware of who is currently logged into the POS and what their privileges are. This program is very intuitive. I'll tender the transaction and start another example. In this next transaction, I will ring up the bottle of wine again, but this time we will pretend that the customer is clearly over the legally required age, and instead of scanning an ID, I will click the manual entry button. Now I can simply enter the date of birth instead. Note that if I didn't have permission to do this, the program would not allow it. In this final example, I will ring up a pack of gum, which has no age requirement. Notice that I am able to proceed to the tender screen with no prompt to scan an ID. We have now covered some of the program's basic functionality. Let's move on to the configuration options. On the first set of configuration options, you can choose different input modes. This means you can tell the program if you want it to prompt the cashier to scan a driver's license or prompt them to manually input the date of birth instead. If you choose the driver's license input mode, you can also have the program show you the details of the license after it was swiped, as shown here. On the Security tab, we set up how each user interacts with the program and what they are allowed to do. You can choose an RMS security level and then choose the different settings for the cashiers that use that level. An example could be to set up security level 5 to force users to swipe an ID at the beginning of a transaction, and users with a security level of 4 to only be prompted to swipe an ID when products of a certain type are sold, and they can override it if they want to. These security levels are the same used in store operations manager's cashier settings, making this program tightly integrated with RMS. On the Verification Items tab, you can define groups of items that require age verification. Most users configure RITE Age Verification to either prompt the cashier when certain items are purchased, this is what we are defining on this tab, or prompt to scan an ID at the beginning of transaction, a configuration option we previously looked at, not usually both. When I click the Add button, you can see that I can create an item group based on departments, categories, or on the basis of a number of different fields, and can set a required age for these particular products. I could, for example, set up all spray paint to require the customer to be 16 and create another group for beer where the customer needs to be 21. There are many other features to the RITE Age Verification tool, but you can see that the program is powerful, easy to use, and can make you feel confident that your retail establishment is legally compliant. You could even use the audit trail it creates to prove it if necessary. If you have any questions about our products, please feel free to contact us. We appreciate your interest and thank you for your time.